Live and in color from the NBC News radio broadcasting studios of KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, located in beautiful Southern California, and in parallel from the Turfs Up radio studio in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Thanks for tuning in to the Water Zone Show this evening.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're calling in this wonderful world, and we'd like to thank you for taking the time out to tune us in and to the Water Zone Show. I'm Rob Starr, along with the best co-host I got in the world or ever saw, and good work peer. I haven't a big enough dictionary to say all the good things about him. Mr. Chris Davey. Chris, how you doing?
You're too kind, Robert. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm right back at you, buddy. Good show coming on. Another consortium show a little bit later on today, and I know Chris Austin's waiting in the wings. She's got some stuff to talk to us about, Robert.
Oh, I've been reading her stuff every day. There's lots of stuff, yeah. So I don't know what she's going to touch on. I was finding she can go whatever she wants, but I found what was interesting is that the fog farming with fog, using fog, and then Representative Josh Hardin wants to send a bill to stop the Delta Tunnel, but I'm sure that's only two of the fantastic stories she got out. So, Chris,
I want to talk about the Delta Tunnel too, but also the Los Vaqueros project as well.
Oh,
Chris.
yeah.
So well. Giving you a bunch to talk about, buddy.
Oh, you're handing it all to me in one big platter.
And here she is. A little drum roll, Miss Chris Austin from Maven's Notebook.
Yeah, lots of fun with the Delta Tunnel stuff this week. What was the one you said about the Delta? You threw so much out there. I'm going to flunk the Alzheimer's test.
Oh no, it was Representative Hardin.
Oh yes. Oh, I know. Yes, I actually think that's kind of funny because Representative Hardin, he is definitely the voice of his constituents, which is Stockton, and they do not like the tunnel. So I can certainly appreciate his enthusiasm for trying to stop the Delta Tunnel, but there's very little federal involvement here in the Delta Tunnel, so there's very little that he can really do, that anyone can do on the federal level, at least someone in Congress. So his bill is to tell the Army Corps to deny a permit for the project, and this is not like a major permit. This is actually probably the easiest permit out of all the permits that the project has to get. It's just basically to modify some levees. So I don't know if Congress can order the Army Corps not to do that. Maybe they can, maybe they can't, but he's got to get all his buddies in Congress to go along with that, and I'm just not sure that's going to happen. But I do appreciate that he is trying, and he is representing his constituents who are against the tunnel. So, he's doing his job, but I think that he doesn't have much of a chance to really do anything. If the feds were, the Bureau of Reclamation was participating in the project, then there would be a lot more places that he could try to attack. But he has found, I think, probably the only place now where the federal government is interfacing with this project. He tried, or with earlier bills, to do things that the federal government wasn't even doing. So those didn't really go very far. But like I said, I appreciate that he is representing his constituents so well.
Yeah, it's about time you have a legislature who wants to do what the people want.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And I guess now's a good time for people who are studying law, because there's lots of lawsuits going on in this country, so they're going to continue. But
I spent last weekend. I was in Berkeley, of all places, at a law school symposium. There's like 5 or 6 law schools in San Francisco and Sacramento, and so the students put on a symposium every year with panel discussions. And this is one of my favorite events to attend, because these students that are in law school have worked really hard to get into law school. So they are very motivated, every single one of them. especially if you're in Berkeley Law School. That's very hard to get into. So you have a group of engaged young people, and it's inspiring, quite honestly. And interestingly, Maven's Notebook, they're all familiar. They've all been told to read it. They all enjoy the website. So they come up and they talk to me a lot, and I encourage them to keep going and to get involved in California water, because it's crazy busy, and and I think it's a lot of fun. But it's great to talk to the young folks, to the students. I have never missed that opportunity.
No, I don't blame you. That's I as you know, my daughter is a lawyer, and she used to work in federal things, and now she's doing what do you call it, the ankle bracelets. She's the senior vice president of that company who monitors all those people who got to wear them. But she's making a lot more money than she did in the FBI, and she enjoys it. So
anyway, there you go.
An unknown participant is now joining.
Oh dear, there's spies among us.
No, go ahead. Give us the juice on all these stories this week.
Well, let's see. So the Delta Tunnel, in other Delta Tunnel news, they got another permit, another endangered species permit from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So the project is advancing through the permitting process. On Monday, they opened up a hearing at the State Water Board, and this is really a critical hearing. This is to change the water rights of the projects that we're going to use the tunnel, and they are moving what the point of diversion, or where they're going to take the water from. They want to move that to the North Delta so it can go into the tunnel. So they have to apply for a change in point of diversion. And those that oppose the tunnel are certainly out in force at this hearing, and it's going to be a very contentious and difficult hearing, I think, to get through for this project to get through, because there's a lot of fierce opposition to it. And this is really the hearing where they're going to talk about the effects, like you're taking, X amount of water out at this point, and how does that affect other people who have water rights in that area, because you're not supposed to impact other people's water rights, or you have to make a deal with them. And nobody in the Delta wants to make any kind of deal on the tunnel, so we'll see how this proceeds. Yesterday, Governor Newsom put out a letter that he wrote to the State Water Board talking about the importance of the Delta Tunnel and the State Water Project to California's prosperity, and noting that when this project was first designed, it did include such a conveyance in the Delta, but it wasn't built because there wasn't any money. But it's been talked about for years, and the reason why is because it's still needed. I mean, it was known when they built the State Water Project that they needed to have this conveyance around the Delta, but they chose not to build it due to money considerations. So here we are, 50 years later now, trying to work at building this Delta Tunnel now. So, and of course, those in opposition to the tunnel were quick to respond to the governor's letter, but this is the thing, if people are against the project, they will show up and they will talk against the project. So if people are for a project, they don't necessarily do that, but it can be really hard for the decision makers to decide otherwise if all they hear is opposition. So I think and that is just an observation. So I would say, in general, to anyone out there, if you don't like a project, then you should certainly show up and say that. But if you are in favor of the project and you want it to happen, then you should also show up and say that as well. And so I think this was, in a way, Governor Newsom sort of showing up for the Delta Tunnel project. We'll see what kind of effect it has. The hearing on Monday was just sort of a pre-conference hearing, or actually I guess it was Tuesday. Monday was holiday. So it was just a pre-conference hearing. The real hearing will open up on March 25th and go on for many weeks. So we'll see how that goes. But it was an interesting start to the week with all of that.
So what else is in the hot seat this week?
Well, the state is trying to figure out how to spend money for the water storage program. They, I think about a month ago, they had one of the 6 projects that are left standing. I think that they're down now to 5, or maybe they're down to 6. But anyways, one of the projects in the water storage program, which comes out of the bond passed Prop 1, which passed in, I don't know, like 2014, like a long time ago. Gosh, that's 10 years ago. Wow, a decade ago. So that put out some money for water storage, surface storage, and some groundwater storage. So some of those projects are progressing. One project has already is in construction and is almost done. And then we have other projects that are working there. The Sites Reservoir is another project that is getting very close to getting all of its permits. And then it will go into construction, and I don't believe it's scheduled to be operational for at least, another 10 years. And that's because it takes a very long time to build a reservoir, especially now. The Sites Reservoir is a reservoir that it's not just one dam. It's being built in a valley, and they have to build, I think, like 5 dams rimming around the valley to sort of fill it in to make the space. So it's not one dam, it's 5, and it's a very large construction area. So that's 10 years. So that project is actually progressing pretty well. The Los Vaqueros project was an expansion of an existing reservoir in the Bay Area, and this, people were very surprised when it fell apart because it has, very little opposition. But in this instance, they just decided it was going to cost too much to build the reservoir. There were several water districts participating in it, and so they just decided they couldn't do it. So that means that there's money that was in the water storage program that was earmarked for the Los Vaqueros project that now returns back to the commission, and they have to figure out what to do with it. And there's some very strict legislative things in the original act that passed that make it difficult to just do whatever they want to it. And the easiest things to do, I think, that they'll probably end up doing is to split that money between the remaining projects that are active. We'll see what they decide. There are other options, but they involve legislation or some other things that make it more difficult to do. So we will see. We'll see what happens there. But it's interesting. The Water Commission is really trying to be good stewards of this money. So they were very unhappy about the failure of the project because they say those funds could have gone to one of the other projects that were in the initial group way back 10 years ago. The problem is that when these projects applied, they weren't necessarily known to be if they were 100% feasible, and they were like near shovel ready. I think it'd be very hard to have a shovel ready reservoir because you have to have so much environmental work done and so much pre-planning work done that it costs, a lot of money to get that work done. And it's not something that you undertake if you're not sure that you're going to have funding to build the reservoir. So, the projects were somewhat speculative in nature when they were awarded 10 years ago. So shouldn't necessarily be surprised if one falls out or a couple fall out. One of the other ones now that's also in the mix is the Pacheco Dam Raise project, and that one is another one that is looking kind of questionable on whether it's going to be able to happen. It's facing some feasibility issues and some financial issues. It was already an expensive proposition to begin with, but then doing some geology work around where they wanted to build the reservoir, they ran into some earthquake faults, so they had to move the reservoir where they were going to put it, and it has increased the cost on that reservoir substantially. And it's really questionable whether ratepayers are going to want to pay for pricey water, is basically. So we'll see what happens with that one. And that one would, again, put some more money back to these other projects. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, like I tell our audience, you're giving the back scenes information about what's going on that we can't read about or don't read about in typical media, print media especially. And thing I tell our listeners is go to mavensnotebook.com. It's a great way to get all your information every single morning on your laptop or your handheld or your phone or whatever. That's how Chris Davey and I collect all our information about what's the secrets happening behind the scenes. And Chris is the only one I know who can get all that information. She got ins everywhere. and you can also go there and become a sponsor if you'd like. And that would be, I'm sure, appreciated from Maven's Notebook. But it's a great resource, and Chris and I, swear by that every day. And it's good to see. She has so many stories. As I said, I don't know how she sleeps and how she gets it all out. I think she has a set of robotic arms. It can probably about 500 words a minute or something like that, because with all the data she puts out, it's amazing. Well, Chris, thank you again for coming on, and I know you're part of our show, and we do appreciate it, and I know our listeners do. Every time I talk to somebody about the show, I say, oh, well, tell her that we love her comments and things, so I'm passing that on to you. So
all right. Well, hey, glad to hear it.
You're well known in the industry. And we will talk to you because we have to turn it over to a commercial break and then come back, but we'll see you next week, and you have a great weekend.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Have a great week, Chris.
All right, we'll be back in just a moment to take a quick commercial break, and we have some featured guests continuing our story about a consortium and the New Mexico Environment Department and New Mexico State University project they're working on. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Most time-saving tools I found for my customers is our app and our e-commerce feature. So customers actually have the ability to view all of their quotes in one place. If you contact your Site One seller, you'll be able to log into your account and see all your quotes in one place. And instead of jumping on the phone or waiting for your seller to call you back, you can approve it right from the website, and it will send a message to your sales rep to get it on order and reserve the material. Customers can learn more about these tools at their Site One branch, from their local seller, from their local CX specialist, and from SiteOne.com or by downloading the Site One app.
All right, welcome back to the second half of the Water Zone with Rob and Chris, and we enjoy doing this show every single week, and thanks to the listening audience, and most importantly, thanks to the contributors who come on our show. Learn a lot of stuff. Well, as everybody knows, we've been doing a multi-segment program in regarding to this project that they've taken on, this consortium taken on, and the gentleman that we've been working with closely, and just a super guy. Wish I knew him 20 years ago. Guy is brainiac. He's a really smart guy. His name is Mike Hightower. He's a professional engineer. He's director of New Mexico Produced Water Research Consortium, and he's brought along a guest that's part of that, and we're going to get into more detail. So, Mike, I'll let you take over for a second and have your introductions.
All right, Robert, thank you very much. It's nice to be on again. Last couple of sessions that we've had, I've given an overview back in May. We've had people from federal agencies like EPA and the Bureau of Reclamation on talking about their interest in the reuse, treatment and reuse of produced water for fit-for-purpose applications. We've had community leaders on from the western U.S. that are really looking for increased non-traditional water supplies to support their stewardship of their fresh water, and using things like treated produced water is something that they're very interested in. We had industry on, the oil and gas industry, that's been doing a lot of research in that arena on produced water reuse, because for a lot of people, oil and gas production in the West, a lot of the communities could use additional water supplies there in arid situations. And so we've kind of talked about it from a different lenses. Today, I have Dr. Pei Zhu from New Mexico State University. Pei is a professor of civil and environmental engineering, 20 years of experience in desalination, and has looked at desalination for a range of waters, from brackish water and saline groundwaters, seawater, and then distillation or desalination of industrial waters and even municipal wastewater. So she has a great experience in treatment of these non-traditional waters, and can kind of relate to the work that she's doing with the New Mexico Produced Water Research Consortium on produced water research. And she's been the executive in charge of research for the consortium since it was started in 2019. So I brought her on to kind of today talk about the status of research, because when I go out into the public, everyone asks questions like, well, isn't it too costly? Isn't desal inappropriate for produced water? You're only doing this at the lab scale. So what I thought I would have is have Pei talk a little bit. I'll ask her 2 or 3 questions I think that your audience would be interested in, and let her kind of give us a state of the art, if you will, Robert, and then I'll open it up for people on the call to chat with you. And I know Chris follows that, and you follow that very closely. And then maybe you can take questions from the audience for Pei as we move forward with this, if that works well with you.
Yeah,
right.
We're very excited about this show, and the guests that you're bringing on yourself. Like I said, I like talking to smart people. So go ahead.
Okay, let's see. So Pei, you're on, I hope. I don't know for sure.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Mike.
On.
Thank you for the introduction.
Hello, Pei. Okay. And I understated it, but it was still good. So I'm going to ask Pei just 2 or 3 questions that the public always asks me if I'm out talking about produced water. And it's really about, is it at a mature enough technology? Does it really work? Can it really be made safe? Isn't it too costly? And so I'm going to ask those questions to Pei and let her kind of give it high level, and then let the audience kind of bring in and expand on any of those 3 questions. So first question, Pei, is a lot of people are suggesting that the science may not be ready to treat produced water for reuse safely. And if it is, it's probably only in the laboratory scale, and it's not really ready for prime time. So as your work in the last 5 years on produced water, could you kind of give us an idea of where you see the scale of produced water? Are there commercial applications already in operation? Are the testing that you're doing there at New Mexico State, is it at lab scale, or is it at lab scale as well as large pilot scale? So maybe you can just give us an update on where you think the maturity of the technology is for treatment of produced water. Okay?
Okay. Hi, Mike. Really, this is a great pleasure to be in this show to talk about the research at the New Mexico State University and also at the New Mexico Produced Water Research Consortium. So, when people say we may not have enough science to ensure the safe reuse of the produced water and all the research is at the lab scale, but actually, I think in the past 5 years, we have made significant progress in understanding the science. And our research is not only in the lab, even though we work on innovative technologies for effective treatment of the produced water, but we also work with industry, to collect the water samples for pilot testing. And there are also commercial produced water treatment technologies. For example, in Marcellus Shale and Eureka, the company has 3 produced water treatment systems and treated the produced water in Marcellus Shale and then recover the valuable minerals and then discharge the water in the river. So there are commercially available technologies. And regarding the science for the safe reuse of the water, I think we have made such a great progress. And then I want to give you several examples about the science advancement. For example, the first question people may ask, what are the constituents in the produced water? This is so critical for safe reuse of that water. So we conducted extensive water quality analysis and collecting the produced water samples in the Permian Basin and in the San Juan Basin, including the raw produced water and also in the treated produced water using different technologies. So we analyzed over 600 constituents. That is a very long list of constituents we analyzed. We detected about half of the compounds, at least once across all the samples we collected from all the projects. So about 290 compounds detected. And then we found just about 30 to 100 compounds that are detected in treated water. That means, through the treatment technologies, we can effectively remove all the chemicals that we have concern. Then we compare these detected compounds and their concentrations with existing water quality standards for beneficial use, including drinking water standards. And that means through all these experiments, including the pilot demonstration project in the field, and we can remove all the constituents of concern. So people may continue to ask the question, how about those unknown compounds? We even don't know their presence in the produced water. So we did non-target analysis. NMSU has a chemical analysis and instrumentation lab that has very sophisticated advanced analytical instruments that can detect organic compounds at parts per trillion level. So we use high-resolution liquid chromatograph with mass spectrometry to detect the peaks of those organic compounds, then identify these compounds based on their molecular formula and structure in the database with millions of compounds. Then after we identify these compounds, we use the EPA tools called chem informatics to predict their toxicity, such as human health effects and ecotoxicity and the environmental fate. And under each category, there are subcategories such as carcinogenicity, genotoxicity, and endocrine disruptions, all these constituents. And if we found a compound that is highly toxic in the treated produced water, and then we will convert this non-target analysis to the targeted quantitative analysis to evaluate its concentration. Because even though a compound could be highly toxic, but their concentration could be so small, eventually the toxicity would be negligible depending on their concentration. So in addition to conducting all these extensive water quality analysis and on all the compounds, including all the salts, metals, radionuclides, volatile organic compounds, semi-volatile organic compounds, pesticides, herbicides, the emerging contaminants such as PFAS. So we want to do more to ensure that the treated produced water is safe for reuse. So we did all the toxicity study on top of this chemical analysis. This research is led by Professor Yan Zhang at New Mexico State University. Her research team conducted the toxicological assessments across all kinds of aquatic life, such as algae, water flea, zebrafish, fathead minnow, and bacteria. So with the appropriate treatment, the purified produced water did not show any toxic effects on the tested aquatic organisms. So in addition to this, she used 5 types of human cell lines to test the toxicity effect of the treated produced water, including the intestinal tissue cells, breast cancer cells, and kidney cells, liver cells, and lung cells. So she tested the impact of the treated produced water on cell viability and estrogen activity. And she also looked at a receptor called the AHR, that is aryl hydrocarbon receptor, and this can result in the toxic metabolites and adverse changes in cellular process and function. The good news is that purified produced water did not show significant impact on cell viability, endocrine activity, and AHR activation. And so even though, as I said, we have done all this research, we want to do more. That is, look at the toxicity on the mammal. We're currently working with Professor Jianlong Xu in biology at NMSU to evaluate the toxicity of treated produced water on mice. So the experiments are still ongoing, but the preliminary acute assays show that there is no significant difference in the weight of the mice when we compare the control experiments and with the treated produced water. So the same conclusion applies to the mosquitoes, because mosquitoes can be used as a sensitive model to test the toxicity of invertebrate animals such as bees, butterflies. The treated produced water has no toxicity to mosquitoes as well. So in addition to all these efforts, we are also conducting the irrigation experiments. Some are in the field, in the Permian Basin. So we use the treated produced water to grow alfalfa, and then we collected those plants. Right now we are doing all the analysis on the plants and on the soil. And we also look at the fate and transport of different contaminants and in the soil columns, and simulating if we have the treated produced water applied to the land, what would happen to those contaminants. And also we are doing the exposure risk assessment using the EPA tools to study the risk of treated produced water during reuse applications. Even though many studies are still progressing, and even there are also a lot of pilot testing projects are ongoing in the field, our research in the past 5 years has demonstrated that with appropriate treatment, we can ensure safe reuse of the produced water. Mike, I hope that I talk a lot, and I hope I answer your question, or do you have more questions for me?
Well, I think what it shows is over the past 5 years that the science that you guys have been applying is state-of-the-art, and so far everything shows that you can treat produced water to a safe level, which is excellent. I think I think people needed to hear some of the things that you're doing. Now, all of these tests that you're doing and all the papers that you're writing are peer-reviewed, and are there available for people to review. They're on the Produced Water Consortium's website. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So, Mike, even though we have done all this research, but eventually we want to get information to the professional societies, to the general public. If anyone is interested in our research results, please check the New Mexico Produced Water Research Consortium website, and under the research, you will find over 30 papers on the produced water research, and including treatment technologies and economic assessment of the produced water treatment for different applications, all the toxicity studies, and we keep on updating the research papers posted on the website. So please feel free to check the website.
Let me just interject that if somebody wants to go to the website, all you've got to do is Google NMPWRC for the New Mexico Produced Water Research Consortium. And we come up when you Google NMPWRC and you click that, you go directly to our website. So for anybody in the audience that wants to see this excellent work that Pei's doing. Now, Pei's working with other universities, with the US EPA, with the state of New Mexico, the state of Texas, and a number of people in industry. So I just wanted to mention that this is a joint effort between industry, regulatory agencies, academia, and federal agencies. So you'll see names of people involved in this research from other groups that you can also reach out to. So let me just go to one last question, Pei, and that is, everybody asks about the cost. What are you seeing on the cost, on your cost analysis? Is this something, produced water, is it still really costly, or is it, when we include the avoided costs of disposal and the cost of additional water, or the benefit of additional water for communities, is produced water treatment currently getting to the point where it's cost effective in many locations across the country?
Right. Yes, Mike, I agree with you. Even though the treatment cost is very important, but we also need to consider the benefits of the produced water reuse projects. For example, we generate fresh water and augment the regional water supplies, especially in the southwest of the United States, where in such a drought we need more water for economic development. And if we treat this water, we will reduce the volume of the produced water for disposal. If we use the Permian Basin as an example, the produced water disposal costs are between $0.75 to $1 per barrel. So 1 barrel is 42 gallons, which is about $18 to $24 per 1,000 gallons of produced water for disposal. So, but even though this cost sounds like very high, but the disposal cost is expected to increase because of the more stringent regulation on disposal and the increasing seismic events, and due to the disposal, deep well injection, and also the decreasing injection capacity. So, Mike, when you talk about the treatment cost, actually the treatment cost of the produced water is highly variable because it depends on the presence of the different types of contaminants in that water and the salinity level and what the water is used for, right? So the produced water treatment cost could be quite low. For example, in Kern County, California, the produced water treatment cost is just about 34 cents per 1,000 gallons because of the low salinity in that produced water. And by the way, that treated produced water has been used for irrigation for the past 2 decades by blending with surface water and the groundwater. And but the cost could increase if we treat the hypersaline produced water, such as the unconventional produced water in the Permian Basin, in the Marcellus Shale. And the cost could be about $35 to $45 or higher per 1,000 gallons. That's about maybe $2 per barrel or even more. But, when we can sell this fresh water for industrial uses, especially think about right now, everybody talks about AI, right? AI needs a lot of energy. It needs a lot of cooling water for the data center. And then there are other industries, we all need water. If we can sell this water, this will offset the treatment cost. And also, produced water is not only a nuisance. It's, the water we want to get rid of. But there are a lot of valuable minerals in that water. One example is the produced water in the Permian has very high ammonia concentration that we can recover ammonia as fertilizers and also as an energy source. And also we have a lot of lithium in the water. We have high sodium and chloride concentration in the water. We can convert those into the caustic soda and hydrochloric acid for reuse. So all of these effort could offset the treatment cost of the produced water for reuse. Another example is Eureka, for example, in the Marcellus Shale, and they recover lithium chloride, calcium chloride, sodium chloride, through the produced water treatment. So, Mike, I feel that, we can cost effectively treat that produced water, especially we can avoid the cost of disposal, and then we can get fresh water for economic development, and we can recover valuable minerals from that line.
Okay, I think it's time, Chris, for you and Robert, you either have some questions or
Sure.
we can take some questions from the. We talked about is it ready for prime time? I think Pei has mentioned that it is. Can we really do it safely based upon the studies that they're doing as far as toxicology and analysis? It's state-of-the-art science and saying that, yeah, we can do this. And then the costs are, can be high, but the disposal costs are high. But there's also that opportunity for water stewardship. If we can use a non-traditional water, wastewater, and alleviate drawing down fresh water, we've done our water stewardship. So maybe there's some other questions based upon Pei's answers that people would like to bring up, and I think we ought to just do that now, Chris and
All right.
Robert, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, you got it, Mike. Absolutely. But if you remember, the last time we were on, there was a question I wanted to ask. We ran out of time to do it, so it's popped up again on the blog here as I'm monitoring it. And with all the stuff that you're doing, you guys at NMPWRC. I mean, that's a heck of an acronym, first of all, to say. But
sorry
you guys,
about that. I came up with
okay.
that idea.
Yeah, no worries. And so I have this question first for you, and then another one. Pei, I have a question for you too. Obviously, somebody on doing the feed here, obviously knowledgeable about what's going on here, and asking you a question about whole effluent toxicity. So I'm not even sure what that is. So I'll give you a chance to think about that. But first, for you, Mike. You can't be a unicorn organization, right? You guys can't. Are there other produced water consortiums in New Mexico or Texas, or you can't be the only one?
No, there are several. Let me just mention a few. Texas has a produced water consortium. They're looking at the same issues we are, and that is, can they recycle produced water and reuse it for uses safely outside oil and gas, agriculture in Texas, industrial supplies in Texas. Colorado has a produced water consortium. They're very interested in the same thing. Pennsylvania has a produced water consortium looking at improvements of produced water, use of produced water for uses inside and outside oil and gas. California has one. Arizona is looking at doing that. Wyoming has a produced water consortium. Oklahoma is starting a produced water consortium. So I think as we see more and more development of produced water in oil and gas over the course of the next, maybe this administration and further, more and more produced water, more and more opportunities. And as we get more and more arid conditions, we're seeing lots of states interested in using this produced water as a additional resource. Just to finish up, the U.S. EPA has in their water reuse action plan the use of produced water as a major opportunity across the country because there are some 35 states that produce oil and gas and have produced water associated with that. So yes, there are several other groups, and if people would be interested in talking to me and you need to know the contacts within your state, I'll be happy to work with you to get those information to them. Okay.
Yeah, terrific, Mike.
Chris? Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know that, and I thank you for answering that. When we had Melinda and Justin on several months ago, there were lots of folks asking that same question, and I never got a chance to ask it. So appreciate that very much. And pay for you while you think about wet testing there, as I've discovered that not only do we have your long acronym, 6-letter acronym, but there's also an acronym for whole effluent toxicity wet testing. So as you answer that question, Pei, I just want to make a comment about the first question you asked, and is the science ready, and what stage is it in? Is it lab technology? Is it at the pilot level? Is it in scale production? And we know the answer is all three of those, right? Because we've had folks on our show just recently, in fact, accelerated filtration. And we know there's other manufacturers with modular and fixed technologies that are out there as well. So just a quick comment to answer one of the other questions on the feed. But Pei, if you can, for our one very curious listener here, go a little bit more into whole efficient toxicity and what that means.
Right. Okay. So the whole effluent toxicity test actually is a standard test set by the US EPA or the OECD for the permitting process. Because when we want to discharge the water, we want to make sure this water is safe for aquatic life. So that's why at the NMSU we conduct the whole effluent toxicity test using the aquatic organisms that I talked about, including the algae and the water fleas and the fish, the zebrafish and the fathead minnowfish, and the secondary consumer is the bacteria. So and then after that, we use the standard method. Then we look at based on the EPA method, look at the test of significant toxicity documents to evaluate the toxicity values and for the different aquatic organisms. And then basically, if we have the good desalination processes and followed by the post-treatment, and then all these criteria we can meet, so we pass the whole effluent toxicity test. But one thing is also very important is to understand the water quality used for the whole effluent toxicity test, because sometimes the water is too pure. It lacks of the minerals to conduct the whole effluent toxicity test. So we have to add back the minerals to that water in order that we have, the water that is good for the organism to pass the effluent toxicity test. So I hope I answered that question. Or if you have more questions, send me an email. So my email is pxu@nmsu.edu.
Awesome. We'll do that. Hey, welcome to the show. This is Rob, and thank you for joining us on the Water Zone Show. We really appreciate it. Couple things real quick. You mentioned the cost of water, cost of produced water, but in locations where they can't get enough water, you don't really have much choice. So that's
Absolutely, yes.
So that's really important to that. We had on a show, and by the way, our company, the Toro company, you guys do a lot of testing on our irrigation products at your university, so we're very happy to have a good relationship with that side. But wanted to say that because you guys have been really great partners with us in a lot of product testing and qualification. But we had on a professor from Washington State University a couple of weeks back, and he was discussing the fourth phase of water, and talking about how inside our bodies we have this special water, we'll call it. He calls it ET. That's the short term that he used. But what was interesting about it, he said it carries a negative charge, electrical charge. And you think about the human body, that your heart keeps pumping and all this. We have no batteries inside of us, but we do have a lot of metals in our body, and that's something interesting to me. So with all this treatment, and as you said, every application of produced water has its own methodology of how you process the water, and like you start talking about membrane technologies and things like that. If you had to list, say, the top 3 issues of technology that needs to be enhanced or incorporated in a processing plant for water, what would they be? And now that I've mentioned this other source of water inside our human bodies, with the electrical charge, the negative electrical charge, with this produced water, if it gets to be good enough to drink, could people use that and then have their bodies help heal themselves? Because we were talking about this with the professor, and that was kind of an interesting topic, and I didn't know if it would affect a human body, for changing the structure of water in there.
Right. Yeah. That's really a very, very interesting concept, ET and the 4th phase of water. Yeah. I want to learn more about it.
I'll send you the link of the interview that we did with him, and he explains it all. It's really, really interesting.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to learn more. But I think related to the produced water treatment, I think it is very important to make sure that the efficiency of the treatment technologies to remove all the constituents, and also the robustness of the treatment technology, and it can work, and then it can handle all kinds of the variability of the water, and then related to the cost. Mike mentioned, I believe there are still ways that we can further optimize the system and reduce the cost. So, and so far, our animal toxicity test that there is no adverse or negative impact. But as you mentioned, maybe we can find some other functions of the treated produced water, even though right now drinking is not our goal.
Yep.
Could be in the future, but when I talk about this, it's for the Permian Basin. But in Wyoming and in many other places, the produced water can be very, very good, high quality.
Yes.
It could be used for drinking.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like I said, this whole subject, when we started talking with Mike and other people about doing these segments, it's really interesting to me as a science. Well, I'm a science guy. I'm an engineer. But I like exploring all these things, and I think there's so many opportunities that we don't even know about that we can help improve and do things. And like I said, when I was talking to this other professor on this water we have inside our bodies, I was thinking, what happens if something changes to that mixture of things that are inside our bodies? Well, because there's all kinds of minerals, magnesium, there's arsenic, all of this stuff is in our bodies. But what would that do to us? And again, that's a whole other discussion. But I'd sure like to spend a lot more time talking to you on the produced water, about any new technologies that we need to look forward to. Maybe power to reduce the cost of power to do the pumping and all of this other things. So we'll leave that for another segment because we're running out of time here. And I really appreciate. I'll let Chris say his words as also. We appreciate both you and Mike for coming on the show and informing our listeners. It's a very interesting subject. Most people don't know anything about it, and this is a great way to educate the world on what you're doing, and we do appreciate that. Chris?
Yep. Thanks, guys, for coming on the show. Our time is up. Appreciate it. Dr. Pei, we're going to invite you back.
Thank you for this opportunity.
All right, we have to leave because NBC takes over to do its news hour, and they're bigger than we are, so we have to say yes. So thank you very much for coming on, and all our listeners, thanks for taking the time to tune us in and listen. You can also go and get this as a podcast 24 hours later on 17 different media platforms. You can find this pretty much everywhere. So we thank you for listening, and what Chris and I always want to tell our listeners, what's really important you should do, please help keep our planet blue, because if you like green, you got to have blue. Good night, everybody.
NBC News on KC.